Sup guys, my name is Ry3 and I just dropped a new glitch pack, and since I dropped it, I decided I want to make a sound design tutorial to kind of cover how a lot of these sounds in here were made. And so you guys can make your own if you use Ableton, and if you don't, I'm sure there's also some way you can adapt this over to FL or some other DAW. So yeah, I guess I'll go ahead and start with a technique I like to call LFO glitching, which is basically just taking a bunch of LFOs and then mapping them to a bunch of parameters on a random plugin. And right here you can see I already have a sine wave recorded. That's just a simple sine that I made an operator. And I'm going to start with, you can do this on any plugin, but I'm going to start with CORPUS. Where is it? And CORPUS is basically a plugin that it's kind of like a weird resonator thing, which makes it really cool for glitches. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to grab a LFO, and you see when you have this, it's set to just a basic sine wave, and you also have this map button, which can be used to control certain knobs on whatever plugin you want. So what I'm going to do is, you have a bunch of options here, but I'm going to set it to random just for this example here. And now you can see that it's going to be randomly doing whatever it wants. And you can adjust the rate to make it go a bit faster, and now you can really see that it's really going all over the place and it has no sense of direction whatsoever. So now you can map this and put this on whatever knob you want. So I'm going to put it on the tune right here, and you can already see it already sounds a bit glitchy, but we can take this a step further by duplicating the LFO and then throwing this on something else, like the material type, like where you see where it says beam right here. So now it's actually changing the material every time. And you can already see that sounds a lot different. And another thing you can do is just put this on other stuff. Like I'll put it on the decay right here. And I'll do it again on the width over here. I'm also going to turn the dry wet up, so we only get that glitchy signal and have none of that raw sine bleeding through. Ow. What else could we modulate here? We could also do the spread over here, so let's go ahead and do that to this. And you can already see this is sounding really cool, and you can also play with the rates over here, like make them slower. Like, let me mess with these a bit. Yeah, you can get some really cool sounds with that. And as you can hear, it's actually different every single time you play it. So when you decide to resample it, like this, like we got one right there, we can just drag that over. We already got a sound right there. And then we can record it again, and we got a different sound. So this is basically a way to just mass produce these. So we got another one right there. We can do it again. That one was really harsh, but it's still really, really cool. Let's do it one more time. Ooh, that one was cool. So now you can see we have a bunch of sounds. And this is only with CORPUS. You can actually do this with a bunch of different plugins. So I'm actually going to do this again, but with a plugin called Grain Delay, which is kind of granular synthesis, but not really. And if I play with this a little bit, you can already see how this is going to have some really cool potential. So let me do the same thing again. I'm going to grab an LFO and set it to random and play with the rate a little bit and depth. And then I'm going to map this to the spray right here. Now you can see that already changed it in a really cool way. But we can just keep going on the frequency right here. And you can already see it's starting to sound really cool and glitchy. So I'm going to do it again on this thing right here. The pitch. Yeah, and unlike CORPUS, instead of just resonating and creating a new sound, this one is like actually altering the sine wave in a really cool way. So I'm going to keep doing this to different ones, like the rand pitch right here. And then I'm going to do it again to this thing, the feedback. And since we're using a sine wave right here, it's actually creating some really, really cool wet and bubbly textures. And since we're doing that, what we can actually do to make it even more wet is take a vocoder right here and go ahead and hit enhance and then set it to modular. And in order to make something sound really wet, you want to take the release knob, turn it all the way down, and the depth knob, turn it all the way up. And you can also set that to 40 bands. And you can see how that makes it sound a lot cooler. You can also mess with the format here. What we can actually do is take an LFO and randomly automate this format. Oh yeah, that's really cool right there. So now we can start resampling these, but before I do that, I'm going to put some OTT on this to make it a bit louder and a bit thicker. Yeah, that's way cooler. Now we can go ahead and start resampling these. So we got one right there. Let's do it again. So we got that. Now let's do it. Let's do it a few more times. Oh, that was a really cool one. Let's go ahead and do it at another time. Oh, that was sick. Let's do another one. Yeah, that's awesome. So now we got even more, like the CORPUS one. And because you can make so many of these in such a short amount of time, that's why I have so many of these. And this is only one technique I've shown, and I'm actually going to show more. Back to this LFO thing, you're not just limited to grain delay and CORPUS. You can actually do this with any plugin you want. Like you can mess with anything like frequency shifters or phasers and flangers. You can also use bit crushers and saturators or anything that alters the sound. You can just throw LFOs on it and randomly mess with certain parameters with LFOs. And that can make basically any plugin into a glitcher. It's really, really cool. Now what I'm going to do is show a different technique that I like to call texture glitching. So what I'm going to do now is take an existing glitch that I've made. Let me find a cool one. Let me actually take something from the glitch folder. So like, let's see. Yeah, let's take this one, this crunchy as ASF4. So we have this. What we can do to this is double click it and we're brought into this little waveform editor here. So what we can do is we can warp it and then we have this drop down menu for beats and then we can set this to texture. And now we're given grain size, flux, which are going to come in handy in a little bit. Now what you can do is you can double click to create these little warp points and then you can stretch and bend the waveform. Like you can compress it in some parts, extend it in other parts, and you can just alter the waveform in this really cool way. And it doesn't really matter how you do this. You can just do it randomly and it'll sound cool basically every time. Like you can already see that that's drastically changed the sound. But what we can do is, this is actually a bit too short for my taste, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to consolidate this and I'm going to unwarp it and then transpose it down so the waveform is a bit longer. Then I'm going to rewarp it again, then unwarp it, put the transposition back, and then set it back to texture. And now we have a longer waveform. And then we can do the same thing again. We can just create more warp points, stretch and bend the waveform. And if you already have a long sample, you can just do this without having to stretch it with warping. And now we have a really cool glitchy sound, but now we can actually start using these grain size and flux things, and also the transposition. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to select the grain size box right here, and then go into the automation thing. And now we are actually able to automate the grain size. And you can see that if I just randomly create points over here, it'll already start sounding really cool and weird. And you can just do this however you want, doesn't really matter. But I found that when you have the grain size all the way down, it makes for a much buzzier sound. And when you have the grain size higher, that usually makes it a bit more spread out. So you get kind of a delay kind of sound. So now we have that. Now what we can do is go to this little drop down menu right here, set it to transposition, and then we can start automating the pitch of it. And this is where it's going to start getting really cool. So you can see that we've just turned this into this. Yeah, you can make some really cool stuff. Like, actually, for example, in the 4th glitch folder, I actually recorded some burps and then did what I just did. And then I got these. So yeah, you can do a lot with that texture warping thing. Another cool thing you can do with warping is actually not texture, but beats, which is actually the default thing, and you can actually use that to make stuff like this. And let me take another random sound. Let me take a vocal this time. That's just the bruh sound. So let's just take this, and I'm going to stretch it out by just transposing it down with warp off. And then I'm going to hit warp, and then put this back. And it's already on beats, so what it's trying to do is it's trying to repeat the parts, so it extends the sample out according to beats. So what you can do is if you mess with this little transposition thing here, you'll actually see that it starts to sound glitchier. And another cool thing you can do is when you have this preserve thing, you can actually set this to like different rates. I like to set it to 132, and you can already see you get some really cool bleepy stuff. And we can actually keep doing this over and over again, so I'm going to consolidate it. And the waveform looks really weird now, but I'm going to go ahead and do it again. And it's starting even more buzzier, so I'm going to consolidate it a second time. I'm going to keep doing this over and over again. But you can see it's getting quieter, so you're going to have to mess with the gain here every once in a while. So just keep doing this. Put the gain back. Keep doing it. And now you got some really cool normal sounding glitches. Or not, I guess normal isn't the right word, but it sounds like what you would think of when you think of glitches. Now that we have this, we can actually mess with another warp mode in here called tones and do basically the same thing. So if I turn this all the way up, it sounds kind of similar, but what the difference here is that you actually have a grain size. So if you mess with this, you kind of get that crunchy effect from the texture warping. So let's go ahead and consolidate that, put this back, and that you can see the waveform is already way different than before. So let's do this again, but instead of beats, tones. Just keep doing this, and you can see the waveform is getting more and more distorted and weird. Let me not put it, I'm not going to put it all the way up, but I'm going to put it up a little bit this time, and then consolidate it again, put the volume back, and yeah. Now you're getting some really, really cool shit. From here, you could do the texture warping thing again. You could add the LFO thing. Like, you have a lot of options here. And the last thing I want to do is actually walk you through some of the racks I have in the pack. So if we go to this sample pack real quick, you'll see that there's some effect racks here. And if you look, we have this glitch rack version 2, which is a very powerful rack, so you're going to need a beefy PC for this one. So if I just take a random sound, like let me grab a one-shot from this pack I never released, like this thing, you'll see that you have a really cool glitchy thing already. And you have a bunch of knobs here. And if we actually take a look inside this rack, you can see it's a lot of what I just showed you. It's a lot of the LFO thing. Like, there's actually a ridiculous amount of LFOs here. And there's CORPUS being automated. There's a bunch of frequency shifters, grain delay. We have a phaser flanger being randomly automated. We have a vocoder and a second vocoder, actually. And just some EQ to take out some harsh stuff and compress the highs a little bit, and then limiting. And if we actually mess with some of these, like that, we could turn the wet water knob all the way up. What it's doing is it's modulating the depth on this vocoder right here, and it's making it a lot more wet, hence the name water. And you also have this CORPUS knob, which is basically automating the amount of CORPUS glitching going on here. So if I turn it all the way down, or all the way up, get a lot more of that metallic corpusy sound, but if I turn it off, you get basically none of that. And we also have this grain glitch, which is just the grain delay, which I showed you earlier. So if I turn that all the way up, you get a very granular sound. And again, like I showed before, this is different every time you record it. So if you throw this rack on certain sounds, it'll be different every single time. Let me actually show you one more rack before I wrap this up. And that is going to be the growl generator. What this does is this is actually an instrument, and this is all stock Ableton plugins. So if you don't need any third-party stuff for this. But you'll see that if I play a note, you get some really cool growly stuff. And this is, once again, relying on vocoders mostly. So if I can find that vocoder, yeah, right here. This is actually set to pitch tracking, and it's on a saw wave. And we're also have a little bit of this random LFO action going on here. And since this is a saw, it's actually creating some really, really cool growly effects. And if you resample that, you can take little pieces out of that and save some growls. And I've actually done that in one of the folders here. I think it's in the third. Yeah, the third one. And you'll see you'll have these nasty gurgles. Which were all made with this rack. And yeah, you can have a bunch of stuff. And you can make your own little glitch library, actually. But yeah, with all that, I guess that basically wraps up all of the techniques I'm going to show today. You can get this pack in the description. It's about 700, 800 sounds. You have some ambient stuff, a bunch of stuff. You have some snares. You have the effect racks. And yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed that. And I will see you guys later for another breakdown or another tutorial like this. And yeah, see ya.